It all started with a question. I didn't realize it at the time, but that one simple, innocuous question would turn my world upside down. It was nothing dramatic, just a casual inquiry from a colleague as we sat at a business dinner, but it was enough to unravel everything I thought I knew about my wife and about myself. Let me explain. I'm not the kind of guy who jumps to conclusions. I'm analytical, I keep to myself, and I certainly don't do drama. I had always prided myself on being the calm, collected one in any situation. So when things started to feel off, I assumed it was just me overthinking. But over time, I began to wonder if that was all it was, just my mind playing tricks. Her name is Laura. We've been married for 5 years, and I've always been the one who's kept things steady between us. If there was ever tension in our relationship, I always believed I could handle it, smooth it over. Laura had her own way of doing things. She was independent, a bit secretive at times, but I trusted her. I trusted her completely. Until that night. I remember it clearly. A small, upscale restaurant. The kind where you have to book reservations weeks in advance, and the menu is half in French. There was no particular reason for the dinner, just another networking event for Laura's work. Her company had partnered with another firm, and this dinner was meant to solidify the deal. Nothing special, I thought. Just another night where I'd sit there, smile, and nod while she worked the room, charming clients and partners with her wit and grace. But what I didn't expect was the question. It came from an unfamiliar voice, one I hadn't heard before. We were deep into the evening now. Drinks had been had, food was served, and the conversation had turned to topics I didn't fully understand. Market strategies, corporate mergers, acquisitions, things that I had no real stake in. Laura was engaged in a conversation with a few of her colleagues at the table, and I was, as usual, lost in my thoughts, distracted by my phone. Then I heard it. Do you ever get tired of the game, Laura? It was a simple question, almost too simple, but it caught me off guard. The person who asked it was a man I hadn't noticed before. He was sitting across the table from her, his fingers drumming on his wine glass. There was a certain aloofness to his demeanor, but his eyes were focused on Laura, almost too focused. Laura paused for a moment, her smile faltering ever so slightly. The room went quiet for a brief second. She chuckled softly, brushing the question off with a casual reply. What do you mean by the game? But something about her tone didn't sit right with me. There was a subtle edge to it, a little too rehearsed, as though she was trying to downplay something deeper. The man didn't smile. His eyes only narrowed, studying her in a way I didn't like. The game, he repeated. The constant balancing act. Work, appearances, clients. Don't you ever wonder what it's all for? I didn't think much of it at first. It wasn't like Laura to be caught off guard by a simple question, especially from someone like him. She was always the professional, always prepared. But I couldn't ignore the way she shifted in her seat. For a moment, she looked uncertain, and that was unusual. Laura was never uncertain. Her eyes flicked toward me briefly before she answered. I guess it's just how things are. You learn to play it, or you don't. It's part of the job. She gave a tight smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. It was the kind of smile that said, I'm hiding something. The conversation moved on, but my mind stayed with that moment. Why had she reacted that way? I tried to push the thought aside, but it lingered. There was something in her response that didn't sit right with me. As the dinner progressed, I started paying closer attention to her behavior. She wasn't herself. She was more distant. She smiled when she needed to, laughed at the right moments. But something was missing. Her usual warmth, the little gestures that made her Laura, seemed absent. She was there physically, but emotionally, she was somewhere else. It wasn't until later that night, after we'd returned home, that I understood just how much things had shifted. As we walked into our apartment, I could feel the tension between us, but neither of us spoke about it. She was acting cold, almost detached, and I had no idea why. I hung up my coat and turned to her, trying to mask the confusion bubbling inside me. Are you all right? I asked, my voice tentative. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked past me, her steps quick and deliberate. She paused at the doorway to our bedroom, looking back at me for a moment. Yeah, I'm fine, she said, her voice flat. But that wasn't the response I was expecting. She didn't seem fine. There was something off about the way she said it, like she was trying to convince herself more than she was convincing me. I don't think you are, I said, stepping closer to her. What's going on, Laura? She didn't meet my gaze. Her eyes focused on the floor instead. Then, after a long, painful silence, she finally spoke, almost in a whisper. "I'm not who you think I am." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I didn't know how to respond. "What does that mean?" I managed to ask, my voice barely above a murmur. She looked at me then, her expression unreadable, and before I could stop her, she walked into the bedroom and closed the door behind her. That was the moment I knew. Something had changed. Something was happening, and I wasn't ready for it. I didn't know what she meant by those words, but I would find out. I wasn't going to let this go, not without an answer. When she said those words, "I'm not who you think I am," it was as if the entire room shrank around me. I stood there in the hallway, frozen, with nothing but the low hum of the fridge filling the silence. My first instinct was to knock on the door, to demand an explanation, but something stopped me. It wasn't just fear, it was this strange, hollow feeling, like I already knew I wouldn't like what I was about to hear. I poured myself a drink, hoping it would calm me down, but my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the glass. I kept replaying that dinner in my head. Every glance, every little twitch in her smile. Every time she looked at Victor like she'd been caught in some secret joke I wasn't a part of. My stomach tightened every time I remembered the way she said that sentence, like it wasn't a joke at all. I tried to tell myself I was overreacting, but the silence on the other side of that door told me I wasn't. She never closed the door on me. Ever. After what felt like hours, I finally knocked. "Laura? Can we talk, please?" My voice cracked, and I hated how pathetic I sounded. I waited, but there was no answer. I almost walked away, but then I heard her voice, low and steady. "I just need some time, Elliot. I'll explain everything tomorrow." Tomorrow. The word echoed in my head like a threat. How was I supposed to sleep knowing there was some truth lurking in the shadows? I wanted to push, to force her to talk, but I couldn't. Something in her tone, cold, controlled, made me realize that whatever she had to say, I might not want to hear it tonight. Maybe not ever. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that look on her face during dinner, like she wasn't even my wife anymore, but some stranger wearing her skin. I started wondering if I'd missed something obvious, something that had been right in front of me all along. Did she already have one foot out the door, and I was just too blind to notice? By morning, I was running on caffeine and nerves. I sat at the kitchen table, waiting for her like some desperate fool, but she didn't come out until almost noon. When she finally appeared, she looked like nothing had happened, hair tied back, oversized sweater, sipping her coffee like she hadn't just dropped a grenade on our marriage. "Laura," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "We need to talk. Now." She set her cup down slowly, and for a moment, I saw something in her eyes. Not fear, not guilt, something colder. Resignation. "I knew you'd ask," she said softly, "but I don't know how to start." The way she said it, like she had rehearsed this moment for weeks, sent a chill through me. My throat felt dry. "Then just say it. Say what you mean by, 'I'm not who you think I am.' Because I swear, Laura, that sentence has been killing me all night." She took a deep breath, leaning on the counter as though the weight of her own words might crush her. "What if I told you," she began slowly, "that everything you think you know about me is only half the truth?" I felt my pulse spike. What the hell does that even mean? Her lips trembled, but she forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It means that the life you think we built together, maybe it's not the same life I've been living." Before I could respond, her phone buzzed on the counter. She grabbed it instantly, like a reflex, and I caught a glimpse of the screen. Just one word on the message: tonight. She locked the screen immediately, her face turning pale when she realized I'd seen it. And that was when I knew, whatever was coming, it was going to destroy me. I don't remember the last time my chest felt that tight. Seeing that single word, tonight, flash across her screen was like being shoved into icy water. My heart pounded, and I tried to ignore the heat rushing to my face. Laura stood there frozen, her hand gripping the phone like it was some lifeline she couldn't let go of. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. The air between us felt poisonous, charged with the weight of questions I was too terrified to ask. I wanted to grab the phone, slam it down, and demand answers, but the look in her eyes stopped me. There was no guilt, no shock, just a strange kind of defiance, as if she'd already prepared herself for this confrontation. "What's tonight, Laura?" I finally asked, my voice shaking despite my best effort to sound calm. She didn't answer, just stared at me with that blank, unreadable expression that was far scarier than any argument we'd ever had. I hated that look. It made me feel small, like I wasn't even worth an explanation. Is it work? I pushed. Is it Victor? Is this about whatever the hell you meant at that dinner? She sighed, setting her phone down on the counter with almost exaggerated care, like it might explode. Elliot, please. Not now. It's complicated. Complicated. I snapped, my voice breaking. You drop cryptic bombs in front of half your company. Then tell me you're not who I think you are. And now there's some mystery tonight? No, Laura, you're going to tell me what's going on. Right now. For a second, I thought she might actually tell me. Her lips parted, and there was this flicker in her eyes. Fear, maybe, or regret. But then she shut it down, just like that. She grabbed her coffee, turned her back to me, and muttered, I have to leave in an hour. I don't want to fight. And that was it. No explanation, no reassurance. She just walked away, leaving me standing there in my own kitchen, feeling like a stranger in my own life. I spent the next hour pacing the living room like a man possessed. Every scenario played through my head, each one worse than the last. Was she having an affair? The thought made my stomach twist, but I couldn't shake it. Something about the way Victor looked at her last night, like they had some inside understanding, kept replaying in my head like a nightmare. But Laura? My Laura? No. I wanted to believe she'd never do something like that. Yet the pit in my gut told me I might not like the truth if I found it. When she finally came out, dressed in a sleek black blazer and heels I hadn't seen in months, my mouth went dry. She looked stunning. But not for me. Not in the way a wife dresses for a casual night out with her husband. This was different. She barely glanced at me as she grabbed her purse. Where are you going? I asked, the words coming out rougher than I intended. She paused, her hand on the doorknob, and for a second I saw something flicker across her face. Hesitation, maybe even guilt. But then it was gone. Just a work thing, she said. Flat. Cold. No details. No room for questions. And then she was gone. The silence she left behind was suffocating. I sat on the couch, staring at the door like an idiot, my mind spiraling. A work thing? On a Saturday night? No way. My gut screamed at me that something was wrong. I couldn't just sit there waiting like some clueless fool. Not this time. I grabbed my keys. I don't know what came over me, but I followed her. I felt like some second-rate detective, my hands sweating on the steering wheel as I tried to keep my distance. Her car led me through the city, away from the office district, and into a part of town that made my pulse quicken. Upscale bars, boutique hotels, places I didn't recognize. Finally, she pulled into the parking garage of a hotel I'd only ever seen in magazines. My chest tightened. I watched as she stepped out, her heels clicking against the pavement, her face set in a look I couldn't read. She didn't glance around. She didn't hesitate. She walked straight inside like she'd done this before. I stayed in my car for what felt like an eternity, my heart pounding, torn between storming inside and demanding answers, or driving away and pretending none of this was happening. But I couldn't move. My worst fears were clawing at me, and all I could do was sit there, watching the entrance, waiting for something, anything, to make sense. Then, 15 minutes later, I saw him. Victor, smiling as he strolled into the hotel like he owned the place. That's when my hands started shaking for real. I don't even remember making the decision to leave my car. One moment, I was sitting there, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, and the next, I was out in the cool night air, my heart pounding like a drum in my ears. Every instinct in me screamed that I shouldn't do this, that I should just turn around and drive home before I found something I couldn't unsee. But I couldn't. Not after everything that had been building up. Not after that word, tonight. I had to know. The hotel lobby was stunning, with its gleaming marble floors and crystal chandeliers that made everything feel just a little too perfect, like it was mocking me. I walked in, trying to look calm, but I felt like everyone could see right through me. My shirt stuck to my back with sweat, and my throat felt tight as I scanned the room for any sign of Laura or Victor. They were nowhere in sight. I stood there for a moment, frozen. What was I even going to do if I found them? Was I going to storm up and demand an explanation? My mind raced with scenarios, each one ending worse than the last. But just as I was about to lose my nerve, I saw the elevator doors closing, and there she was. Laura, standing next to Victor, her hand brushing against his arm as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Something inside me cracked. I ran toward the elevator, but the doors closed before I could reach them. I stood there, staring at the closed doors, my reflection in the polished metal looking back at me like a stranger. For a second, I thought about pressing the button and following them. But what if I found something I couldn't handle? What if this was the moment my marriage completely shattered? The logical part of my brain told me to wait, to think. But logic had left me hours ago. I jabbed the button for the next elevator and stepped inside, my hands shaking. As the numbers climbed, I tried to come up with some sort of plan, but the truth was, I had nothing. I was walking straight into whatever storm they'd been brewing behind my back. The elevator stopped on the 7th floor. The hallway was silent, the kind of silence that makes your heart race faster because you feel like you don't belong there. I had no idea which room they'd gone into. I stood there, my mind racing, when I heard it, the muffled sound of voices coming from down the hall. One of them was unmistakably hers. I followed the sound, each step heavier than the last. My palms were slick, my breath uneven. I stopped just short of the door where the voices were coming from. I couldn't make out the words, but I knew it was her. Laura's voice was sharp, almost anxious, and Victor's was low and commanding. I leaned closer, my ear practically against the wood, and then I heard it. "I told you he's starting to suspect something," Laura said. My stomach dropped like a stone. "Suspect what?" Victor laughed quietly, and the sound made my skin crawl. "Then stop being so obvious. We can't have him ruining this. Not now, not when everything is on the line." My mind went blank. I stepped back from the door, my heart hammering so hard I thought I might collapse. This wasn't just about some stupid joke at dinner. This wasn't just me overthinking. Something real, something huge, was going on, and I was completely in the dark. I wanted to burst into that room, to confront them both, but something stopped me. Maybe it was fear, or maybe it was the realization that I didn't even know what I was accusing them of. So instead, I did something I never thought I'd do. I walked away. I stumbled back to my car like a ghost, my head spinning, my chest tight with anger and confusion. By the time I slammed the door shut, I could barely breathe. I just sat there, gripping the wheel, staring at nothing, as the reality of what I'd heard sank in. They can't have him ruining this. What the hell did that mean? Was I being paranoid? Or was my own wife plotting something that I couldn't even begin to understand? That night, I didn't go home. I drove aimlessly for hours, replaying every single moment of the past few months, looking for clues I might have missed. And slowly, an idea started to form. I needed proof. I needed to know exactly what was going on before I confronted her. Because if I didn't, I might just lose everything, including my sanity. When I finally parked my car, it was almost dawn. I sat there in the gray light, promising myself one thing. I would find out the truth, no matter how ugly it was. But I had no idea just how ugly it was about to get. I barely recognized myself the next morning. I hadn't slept at all, just sat in my car, staring out at the empty streets, watching the world slowly come alive while my own reality felt like it was collapsing. My eyes were bloodshot, my thoughts tangled, but one thing was crystal clear. I couldn't go on pretending I didn't see what was right in front of me. Something was wrong with Laura. Something huge. And if I didn't start pulling at the threads, I'd never know how deep it went. When I finally got home, the apartment was quiet. Her side of the bed hadn't been slept in. The sight of those neatly arranged pillows hit me harder than I expected. It confirmed she hadn't come home last night. I stood there, staring at the empty space where she should have been, a cold, bitter anger rising in my chest. I wanted to call her, but my fingers froze on the phone. What would I even say? Where were you? She'd just lie. I could feel it. Instead, I went to her office. Our little home office, the one she used for remote work. Laura's laptop was there, closed, but I noticed something strange. There were sticky notes on her desk, little scribbles that didn't make sense to me. Random numbers, initials I didn't recognize, and a single line that made my stomach drop. Meeting moved. 11 p.m., Suite 709. I didn't know what I was looking at, but the suite number. I remembered the hotel. Suite 709. It wasn't just a coincidence. That was when I made a decision I didn't think I'd ever make. I opened her laptop. I knew her password. She wasn't the type to keep secrets from me, or at least I'd always thought so. But as soon as I logged in, I realized how wrong I'd been. There were emails I'd never seen, conversations with names I didn't recognize, and one folder hidden deep in her drive, labeled with nothing but the letter V. My pulse quickened as I opened it. There were documents, contracts, invoices, and, strangely, photographs. Some of them were of places I'd never seen before: high-rise boardrooms, luxury hotels, even what looked like the inside of a private jet. But the one that made my blood run cold was a photo of Laura and Victor, standing close together at what looked like some sort of private event. She was laughing, her hand on his chest, and he was looking at her in a way no business partner should ever look at a married woman. I couldn't breathe. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped the laptop. I wanted to throw it across the room, to smash it, to erase everything I'd just seen. But I couldn't stop scrolling. There was another file, a message draft, that read, "He's starting to ask questions. We might need to change the plan. Let's talk tonight." It wasn't sent yet, but it was addressed to Victor. Change the plan? What plan? My chest tightened with dread. It felt like I was drowning in my own life, like the woman I'd shared my bed with for years was a stranger I couldn't trust. I closed the laptop and sat there, staring at nothing, while the same thought ran through my head on repeat. What the hell is going on? By the time Laura finally came home, it was almost noon. She walked in like nothing had happened, tossing her keys on the counter and giving me a quick, casual smile, as if we hadn't spent the last 24 hours dancing around some dark secret. "You're up early," she said, grabbing a glass of water. Her voice was calm, too calm. I couldn't take it anymore. "Where were you last night?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. She froze for just a fraction of a second, but I saw it. That tiny slip, the crack in her mask. "Work," she said too quickly. "Victor needed me to." "Stop," I snapped, cutting her off. "Don't say his name like I'm an idiot. I saw you, Laura. At the hotel." The glass in her hand trembled slightly, but she didn't break eye contact. "You followed me?" she asked, her tone more shocked than guilty, which made my anger spike. "You're damn right I followed you. What was I supposed to think? You sneak off at night, you show up with him, you whisper about me suspecting something, and I'm just supposed to sit here and smile?" My voice cracked at the end, that pathetic, broken sound I hated. For a moment, she didn't say anything. She just looked at me, like she was calculating something, like she was deciding how much of the truth I could handle. And then, she sighed. "Elliot," she said softly, almost like she was talking to a child, "you have no idea what's really going on." "Then tell me," I shouted. "Tell me before I lose my mind." She stared at me for what felt like an eternity. And then, with a quiet voice that made my blood run cold, she said, "If I tell you, you'll wish you never asked." Her words hung in the air like a blade dangling over my head. "If I tell you, you'll wish you never asked." For a second, I didn't even know how to respond. My anger was boiling, but there was this creeping fear clawing at the edges of my mind. I had gone into this thinking I'd catch her in a lie, maybe an affair, something I could confront her about, something I could name. But now, the way she looked at me, calm, almost pitying, made me feel like I had stepped into a story I wasn't meant to hear. "Try me," I said finally, my voice low and hoarse. My hands were trembling, but I clenched them into fists to hide it. "Tell me what I don't know, Laura. Because right now, every second you stay quiet is making me think worse things than you can imagine." She leaned against the counter, folding her arms, and for the first time in a long time, I noticed how tired she looked. There were faint shadows under her eyes, like she hadn't been sleeping, and something about her expression was off. Not just guilt or fear, but a strange kind of resignation, like she'd been carrying something heavy for so long that letting it slip didn't even scare her anymore. "You think this is about Victor, don't you?" she said quietly. My jaw tightened. "Isn't it?" A faint, humorless smile tugged at her lips. "God, Elliot, if it was just that, you'd be lucky." "What does that even mean?" I snapped, my voice rising despite myself. "You're sneaking out at night, meeting this guy at hotels, whispering about me suspecting something. And I'm supposed to believe this is all nothing? You've been lying to me, Laura. For how long?" She flinched, but only slightly. Then she looked me straight in the eye and said, "Since before we were married." It felt like the floor disappeared beneath me. I laughed, an ugly, hollow sound, because I didn't know what else to do. "What the hell are you talking about?" Laura sighed, pushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Do you remember that job I had when we first met? The one I told you I quit because the company folded?" "Yeah," I said slowly. What about it? I never quit, she said. And the company didn't fold. It wasn't even really a company. It was something else. Something you don't want to know about. I stared at her, my mind racing. What kind of something else? Are you saying you're what? A criminal? Working with people like Victor? She hesitated, and that hesitation said more than words ever could. It's complicated, she said, repeating the same damn phrase that had been driving me insane for days. No, Laura, I said, my voice breaking now. You don't get to do that. You don't get to keep saying it's complicated while I sit here, losing my mind. Just tell me, what the hell are you hiding from me? She looked down at her hands for a long moment before finally whispering. I made choices, Elliot. Before you. Choices that put me in debt to people I can't just walk away from. Victor is part of that. He's not what you think he is. And neither am I. I felt sick. My mind flooded with questions, each one darker than the last. Debt? What kind of debt? Are you saying you owe him? Laura's lips tightened, but she nodded. It's not about money. It's favors. Promises. And now, with the merger his company is pushing, I'm in the middle of something I can't just step out of. I wanted to protect you from it, but she trailed off, her eyes glistening. I shook my head, trying to process everything. Protect me? You're sneaking around with him, Laura. Do you have any idea what that looks like? Do you know what it's doing to me? I know, she whispered, her voice breaking slightly. I know what it looks like. But it's not what you think. Victor isn't my lover, Elliot. He's my handler. The word hit me like a slap. Handler. It didn't make sense. Handler. I repeated, my voice barely audible. She met my gaze, and for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. Real fear. Elliot, if I tell you everything, you'll be in danger too. And I can't let that happen. You have to trust me. Trust you, I said, my voice rising again. You're telling me our entire marriage has been built on lies, that you've been doing God knows what with people like Victor, and I'm supposed to just trust you? Her eyes hardened. I lied to keep you safe. If you dig too deep, you'll regret it. I opened my mouth to argue, but then something unexpected happened. Her phone rang. She glanced at the screen, and all the color drained from her face. She didn't say a word, just answered with a quiet, I'll be there. Then she hung up, grabbed her purse, and looked at me with this expression that was half apology, half warning. Don't follow me this time, Elliot, she said. Please. For your own good. And just like that, she was gone again, leaving me standing in our kitchen, my entire world tilted sideways. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to listen to her. Not this time. If she thought I'd sit back while she disappeared into whatever shadowy mess she was tangled up in, she was dead wrong. The next time I saw Victor, I'd make him tell me everything. The second the door closed behind her, I knew I was going to follow her, no matter what she said. It wasn't just about curiosity anymore. It was survival. I couldn't keep living in this fog, waiting for her to come home with some new cryptic excuse. If she thought I'd be the obedient, clueless husband while she waltzed off with Victor, or whoever the hell he really was, she was wrong. I needed answers, even if those answers destroyed me. I waited 5 minutes, just enough to make sure she wouldn't catch me leaving, and then grabbed my keys. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like my ribs might crack. I didn't care if I was overreacting. Every bone in my body told me something was dangerously wrong, and I wasn't about to sit here and find out the hard way later. Her car was easy enough to follow this time. She wasn't being cautious. Maybe she thought I'd finally listened to her warning. She drove out of the city, past the familiar streets, until the neighborhoods grew quieter, emptier. The road curved into an industrial area I'd never paid attention to before, a place of warehouses and old shipping yards. She parked near a building with no name on the front, just a tall gray structure with tinted windows that looked like it hadn't seen sunlight in years. I stayed back, parking my car half a block away. My stomach was tight, my hands gripping the wheel as I watched her step out. She wasn't dressed like someone heading to a business meeting. There was no elegance, no carefully chosen outfit. She wore jeans, a hoodie, and sneakers, almost like she didn't want to be recognized. She glanced around, making sure no one was watching, and then disappeared through a side door. I sat there for a few minutes, debating with myself. I could leave now, go home, pretend I didn't see this. But the thought made me sick. I had already gone too far to back out. So, I got out of my car and followed. The side door wasn't locked. I slipped inside and found myself in a dimly lit hallway that smelled faintly of metal and oil. My footsteps echoed softly as I moved deeper, ears straining for any sound of voices. The place felt abandoned, but then I heard it, faint murmurs coming from somewhere up ahead. I crept closer, keeping to the shadows, until I reached a partially open door. Through the narrow gap, I could see a large room filled with long tables, laptops, and papers scattered everywhere. It wasn't a business meeting. It looked like some kind of underground operation, something between a tech startup and a war room. Screens on the walls displayed maps, encrypted messages, and surveillance footage. My breath caught in my throat. One of the camera feeds showed our apartment building. Another was focused on me, walking into work last week. I stumbled back, trying to process what I was seeing, when I heard her voice. "Laura, clear as day. We can't keep this up," she was saying. "He's asking questions. He's not stupid, Victor. He knows something's wrong." Victor's voice was calm, almost amused. "Then we make him stop asking. You knew what you were signing up for, Laura. If he gets in the way, we deal with it." My stomach twisted. Deal with it? What the hell was that supposed to mean? Laura didn't answer right away, but when she did, her tone had changed. "No, he's not part of this. I won't let you touch him." Victor laughed, a low, cold sound that sent chills through me. "Then you'd better find a way to shut him down, or I will." I felt my knees weaken, my mind racing. This wasn't just an affair or some shady deal. This was something far worse. I had no idea what they were planning, but I knew I was in deeper than I ever imagined. Before I could move, the floor creaked beneath me. I froze. Inside the room, the voices stopped. Then I heard footsteps coming toward the door. Panic surged through me. I turned and bolted down the hallway, my heart slamming against my ribs. I didn't look back, didn't care if they saw me. I just needed to get out. I burst through the side door and sprinted to my car, fumbling with the keys before finally throwing myself inside. I started the engine and sped off, my hands shaking so hard I could barely grip the wheel. I didn't stop driving until I was miles away. I pulled over in an empty parking lot, my head pounding, my breath coming in sharp bursts. What had I just walked into? My wife, my Laura, was involved in something dangerous, something that had surveillance on me, and now Victor wanted to deal with me. That night, I couldn't bring myself to go home. I sat in my car, thinking about everything. Our marriage, our life, every little thing I thought I knew about her. It all felt like a lie now. And yet, part of me wasn't just angry. I was scared for her. But there was one thing I knew for sure. I couldn't go to the police. Not yet. I didn't even know what to tell them. "Hi. I think my wife might be working for some kind of shadow operation." They'd laugh me out of the station. No, I needed proof. Real proof. I needed to know exactly who Victor was and what Laura was tangled up in. I told myself I'd confront her when she came home, but when she walked through the door hours later, looking tired and worn, I couldn't. I just stared at her, and for the first time, I felt like I was looking at someone I'd never met. The worst part? She looked right back at me and smiled, like nothing had happened. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there in the dark, listening to Laura's slow, steady breathing beside me, my mind spiraling into every dark possibility I could imagine. What if Victor wasn't just some shady businessman? What if Laura was involved in something criminal, or worse? I thought about the surveillance footage, about Victor's voice saying he would deal with me, and every muscle in my body tensed. I felt like a stranger in my own life, in my own bed. And yet, when I looked at her sleeping face, part of me still wanted to believe that she wasn't the monster my mind was painting her to be. By morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to end this, one way or another. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and waited for her to wake up. When she walked into the room, her hair messy and her eyes tired, I didn't waste time. "Sit down," I said. My voice was calmer than I felt. She raised an eyebrow but obeyed, sensing the gravity in my tone. "Laura, I know," I started. "I know about Victor. I know about the warehouse. I know you've been keeping things from me, big things. And I need you to tell me everything, right now, or I swear, I'll." She stopped me with a look. Not an angry look, but something softer, almost pained. "Elliot," she said quietly, "you followed me again, didn't you?" I hesitated, but nodded. "I had to. You're scaring me, Laura. Do you even realize how this all looks? What are you involved in?" For a long moment, she just stared at me. Then she let out a slow breath and said, "Okay, no more secrets. You deserve the truth. And for the next hour, she told me everything. It wasn't an affair. It wasn't a criminal operation. It wasn't anything close to what I'd feared. Victor wasn't her lover, and he wasn't some villain, though I'll admit, I still don't like the guy. He was part of a private security consulting firm that Laura had been secretly working with for the last 2 years. Apparently, before we even met, she'd been dragged into a serious financial mess by her ex, a disaster that nearly ruined her life. Victor's firm helped her get out of it, but in exchange, she agreed to work with them part-time, helping with corporate PR strategies and, in some cases, damage control for companies under investigation. The surveillance footage? It wasn't targeting me. It was part of their monitoring systems used for their clients. One of their accounts was at my company, which is why my face popped up on the feeds. Laura had kept it from me because she didn't want to involve me in something that could potentially hurt my career. As she spoke, the weight in my chest slowly started to lift. She wasn't betraying me. She was protecting me, in her own misguided way. When she finished, she looked at me with tears in her eyes. I'm sorry I didn't tell you, Elliot. I was trying to keep you out of all this, but I see now how much I've hurt you. I should have trusted you from the start. For a moment, I just sat there, letting it all sink in. Then I reached across the table and took her hand. You should have, I said softly. But I also should have trusted you enough to ask instead of spying like some paranoid fool. Her lips curved into a small, sad smile. Maybe we both messed up. Yeah, I said, squeezing her hand. But we can fix it. That afternoon, we drove out to the coast, just the two of us. We walked along the beach, the sound of the waves drowning out the chaos of the last few days. We talked, really talked, about the lies, the fears, the way we'd both let distance creep between us. And for the first time in months, I felt like I had my wife back. That night, as we sat on the sand watching the sunset, Laura leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, We're going to be okay, Elliot. I promise. No more secrets. And for the first time in a long time, I believed her.